What up, guys? It's Town here. In today's video, I'm going to be ranking the best pro players on NA Central. First up, we have Acorn, and for me, obviously, I think he is one of the best in North America. Just won FNCS recently, already won a qualifier. Best NA, no doubt. Next up is Agers. Agers, obviously, for me, is going to go into great. I think that Agers with Kanata has been one of the most consistent, impressive duos. I think Agers and Kanata are just meshed so well together. I think we can put him best in A once they win an FNCS, and I think I'm going to give Kanata a little bit more love for his consistency. Next up, we have Asian Jeff. As a player, I'm going to put him as mid. Content creator, a lot better in my opinion. Him and Oliver OG were just great for content, but not in terms of players. Next up, we have Aviv. I'm going to put him at good. I think he needs a little bit more of a resume to play great. However, with him playing Skittles, I think this duo can do very well. Next up is Batman Booga, over from NA West. For me, clearly up and coming. I think one of the best, rising star players. Got a good coaching captor. Him and his duo are going to do very well, I think, in Grands, and I've already, I believe, qualled. Next up is Bizzle. Bizzle's peak, obviously one of the best players of all time. I think right now as a player, you could put him in good or mid. Probably, I'm going to put him in mid. I think that him and Blake are a good pair, though. And next up, speaking of, is Blake. I'm going to put him at good. I think right now as a player, Blake is a little bit better, especially from solo standpoint. So I'm going to put him there. Bizzle from his peak is just a lot differently. Next up is Bucky. As a player, currently Bucky is mid. Obviously, content fantastic. No doubt in my mind, Bucky's probably top tier in content, stream, community, all that stuff. Bucky is improving though. He just got a top 5 in the most recent qualifiers, so we could see him jump up as he's found a pretty good teammate in my opinion in Okus. Next up is Booga. Obviously, no doubt, multi-FNCS champion, one of the most famous Fortnite players in the entire world. Consistent from Chapter 1 to Chapter 4. Gotta give him best NA. Next up is Byla. I'm going to put him in the good category, even though he has one FNCS. I believe that's more influenced on Peterbot skill, and since they've split up, he has really struggled to, even with good quality teammates, to really rise to the occasion, so it'll be interesting to see. Next up, we have Cam. I'm going to put Cam at great. I think he finally has a respectable duo with Jamper, and they just placed top 10 in the most recent qualifier. Cam in Chapter 3 was arguably the best solo player in the world, incredibly consistent, so I'm going to put him there. Next up, I'm going to have Casker. I'm going to put Casker in mid. He's never really been at the top of leaderboard and doesn't really, when you think of Casker, you don't think of best Fortnite players in the world. I think he's, quality, obviously, but compared to some of the names of this list, not as good. Next up, we have Cease. Cease, I mean, as a player right now, is probably just mid in terms of his skill, but all-time, kind of like with Bizzle, just their peaks were so high in early Fortnite. Their IGLing skills is what they're, are they mainly good for. Like, you don't really think of these players now as dominant solo players that can take over matches in that mode, but can definitely lead you to victory in team modes. Next up, we have Scented. We're gonna give Scented great. Unfortunately, due to clicks being banned, his status is kind of up in the air. We saw him place well on Invitational with Cold. We've seen him get multiple second places with Edgies. Great resume, one of the best IGLs in the game, and as a player, you probably feel him a little bit more at this point than you do Bizzle and Cease. Next up, we have Chimp. I think Chimp is a good, solid player. Him and Spade have been a duo for a long time. They've seen some success, been at a couple, at the top of a couple leaderboards. However, really doesn't have the resume of the players above him. Next up is Chubbs. I'm going to put Chubbs probably in just mid. Don't really know too much about him. He may have been up and coming, but I haven't really seen anything from him this season. Next up in Clarity G. Clarity G's had a long-standing resume. I'm going to put him in good as well. Next up, we have, this one's tough. I'm going to put him in the great category, Clicks. I think Clicks, one of the most consistent players, hasn't had the FNCS championship under his belt. However, one of the most consistent and by far the biggest Fortnite player in the world in terms of community. Next up, we have Cold. Cold clearly is going to go best NA for me. He really just showed off his skill. It was fantastic to watch him last season. You've already seen it in Qualifier 1. Right now, probably the best fighter in North America in terms of just ability to solo clutch as well from a fighting standpoint. Next up, we have Commandment. I believe he's actually quit. I'm not sure. Haven't seen him since Avery left as well. They won their FNCS. I think that's all he wanted to do. If, he was still playing, you could honestly argue with his resume to put him in great, but we're going to put him there for right now. Cooper, I'm going to put him up and coming. He's playing with Miro. They're going to make Grands. This could be argued that Cooper's coming because he's playing one of the best, controller players, if not the best controller player of all time. But we'll see. Next up, we have Death. Death has been pretty consistent. I think, as a player, he's pretty decent. I'll put him in good for right now. Defiable, let's see. We'll have to put him, I believe, in he's NA West, hasn't had a huge impact on Central. I'll just put him in mid for right now. Next up is Dejan. I think Dejan has been good, quality player for a long time. Same thing for DeRoller. Day is so hard to rank. Unfortunately, I think right now I'm just going to put him at good. Obviously, his peak was probably more towards the top, but you know, he's struggled. He didn't make finals last season. He may this season with him, and I believe it's Shore. Been playing pretty well thus far, so it'll be interesting. I think he's made both finals thus far. Next up is Diego Plays. I'm gonna put him in I'm gonna put him just kind of in the wash category, just because his peak isn't super high. He's played with Bizzle, hasn't made grands, hasn't really made an impact, so we're gonna put him there. I'll put Donnie at mid. He got to play with Clicks, which kind of boosted his profile, and then after Clicks left, you know, he's also kind of struggled to really find success. Him and Aviv did really well initially, and then he went on to Clicks, and Aviv's had much more success since they split. I'm gonna put Dubs in good, just simply for his longevity, kind of like Day. Like obviously their peaks were super duper high, but currently at this current moment, I'll put them there. Dukes, I'm gonna put in the great category. Consistently making grand finals. I'm surprised, you know, Dukes has won FNCSs, been at the top of the game, and has been pretty much at the top of leaderboards for, you know, Chapter 2, Chapter 3, and Chapter 4, so we'll put him in the great category. Same thing with Edgy. Edgy, you know, paired with Scented, a lot of second place performances in duos and trios, so definitely going to put them there. Elite, I'm going to put, I don't know, I haven't heard anything from him, and his peak's not super high. I'll put him in mid. Iamzo, I'm going to put in the great category. Him and Rise have been consistently one of the best duos and teams since in Chapter 3, so no surprise, and he's also a very good solo player. Epic Well, I'm going to give it the GOAT respect. Most FNCSs on NA now after the merger, has already won 2 tournaments in FNCS with Reed, so I believe he's probably, you know, you got to give him six rings on NAs. You got to give him his respect. Fatch, I'm going to put him in great, just because that duo with him and Pam Stu has been fantastic since they formed Chapter 3, and I believe they have another top 5 today, so got to give him the great. Faz, we're going to put him in washed. Him and Snacky have been struggling immensely this season, and Faz hasn't had as much success since he split from Snacky, and now they're reformed and they're not having that much success, so we'll have to put them there. Same thing with Glace. Glace has kind of been always making a few grand finals here and there. I'll put him in washed. I don't believe he's done that well this season. Gold might be making a comeback, but for right now, I'll put him in washed. He doesn't really have a crazy resume since he split off from Elite. Really doesn't have anything. Jock, I'll put him from his peak with him winning FNCS with Acorn and trios. He's playing with Qua currently. I'll put him in mid. I think you got to respect his FNCS. Jamper, I'm gonna put in great. He's been incredibly consistent for a long time, always usually top of the leaderboards, making good content with paper. He can kind of flip-flop between great and good. We'll have to see. Jackson J, I'm going to put him at mid. Kanata, most consistent grand finals, breaking Stretch's record. Have to give him the status. He's probably going to be the only one in this list without an FNCS title. There might be another one, but we'll put Kanata right now, best in A, especially currently. It was such a shock he didn't qual, but they got a first week, but they got a top 5 today. Knifer, I think he's decent. I'll put him in mid right now. It doesn't really like move me as a player too much. Same thing with Qua. Quanti, I think, is on the come up. I think him pairing with Peterbot can only raise his stock a little bit. For this current season, I'm going to put him on the come up. Larson, I think Larson's a good quality player. I'll put him there. He's done well with Smite. He's got another top 15 today. Lawrence, I think, kind of goes in the mid category. Kind of hasn't really done anything. Macwood, I believe, is washed. I'm not even sure if he's playing anymore since him and Threat split. I haven't seen him anywhere near leaderboards. Mason's probably have one of the worst FNCS unfortunate things. I'll put him at mid right now. Mega, I'll put him in wash. Just, you know, he's playing with Justice, and it's been okay. We'll have to see if he makes another grands. Miro, no doubt, multi-FNCS champion, barely taking the game seriously. Still going to play grands this season with a new teammate. You know, he's an automatic grands, you know, ball every time he touches the controller. Best controller player to ever do it, so easily best NA. Muzz is great. Absolutely was probably one of the best players last season. Would drop consistent high kill games in solos. Finally played really well in duos without Boog and Miro. I'll put him in the great category. Nick, I think Nick is a good player. He's good. He's solid. There's nothing really like too flashy. Not the craziest placements, but pretty consistent. I'll give him decent. NPen, I think NPen is on the come up actually. I think him and Polarize have been just showing their potential. I think they've had multiple top 5s in both semis in week 1 and week 2. They've been really popping off. I think they're gonna end Penn stock's only going up. Nut, I'm gonna put in the mid category. Haven't heard too much from him this season. Okis kind of reminds me of Illust. He's a good quality controller player, always making grand finals. Doesn't have like a super crazy peak. However, he reminds me of Illust. Chapter 1, Chapter 2, consistent, high placing controller player. For Okis, it's the same thing. Chapter 3, consistent, high placing controller player. Oliver of OG, as a player, probably mid. IGL is decent. Him and Asian Jeff are fantastic content. He's still a great content creator, in my opinion. That's more his calling, but as a player, mid. Pantsu, I'm going to put great. Since they formed with Thatch, they've been one of the best duos, no doubt in my mind. Paper, this one's tough. I think I'm going to put him at good, and only because kind of all the issues that have come with Paper, just kind of on Twitter and streaming platforms and stuff. I'm just giving it a little bit edge to Jamper. Next up, I have Peterbot. I'm going to put Peterbot in a great category. 1 FNCS under his belt. I swear, if he just took the game seriously, got a coach, put his heart and soul into it, he could easily be best in A. But I think, just needs a little bit more of a push. Him and Booger could have easily dominated that FNCS. And there was times that I looked at it, but I just don't think Peterbot takes it as seriously. Pledge, I'm going to put in the mid category. Pollo or Apollo, I think it's Pollo. NA West player, came over, had a fantastic season last season, is doing incredibly well from switching West to Central. I think he's on the up and coming. We're going to see him. Same thing with Polarize. Polarize has been incredibly consistent. Always usually making grands, but usually was always bottom 15 in grands. I love Polarize. Big Body BAI. I think he's one of the most gifted fighters. If he finally does well, we could kind of, maybe put him into the good category starting just because of his resume. But like in terms of individual skill, in terms of fighting, he actually may be top 5 on the region. Pump, I'm going to give him his flowers, man. This guy is a grinder. Doesn't matter if it's no builds, solos, duos. He's placing, won the most solos last season, has qualified for the LAN for no builds, already qualified for grands for duos this season. Top 10 in grands last season. This guy is just one of the best controller players, probably top 3. I'm going to probably give it to him. I believe he's right now currently number 2 or number 1. And next up is Reet. I'm going to give him his flowers. Multi-FNCS champion, the scariest fragger, still on NA. It didn't matter. You knew he could do it on high ping when he was doing it in DreamHack. He's doing it here on Central now that he's hard 0. He's incredibly scary. Him and Epic have already won 2 tournaments with their W King ability, getting the most kills both times in semis. I believe they just came off another, I think they had a top 5 today. So I'm going to give Reet his flowers. Rise, great player. Consistent, him and Iamzo, one of the most consistent high placing duos. I'm going to definitely put him up there. Ritual, I'm going to put him in mid. Not anything really just jumps out to me. Rokane's a good player. I love the pairing of Rokane and Joji. I thought they complemented each other well. Fortunately, Joji quit. Next up was Scoped. Man, I liked Scoped a lot from his peak. Obviously, he was one of the scariest controller players at the time. I think currently now he's more focused on content. I'll put him in mid, but I love Scoped just overall. Seek. I haven't heard anything from him. I'll put him in the wash category. Shadow, I think, is kind of on the up and coming, and so is Shore. Shore, especially kind of reviving Day's career. Skittles, I'm going to put Skittles in great. He has a little bit more consistency than Aviv, in my opinion. When Skittles, I can't remember who he used to play with consistently, but I'll put him there. I may switch, but you could kind of flip-flop these two as well. Smite, I think he's a good solid player. He's done well with Larson. They're finally back for him. They got a top 15 today. They did decent at Invitational as well. Stacky, since he's Fab's duos, I'm going to say he was washed. He's a 2-time FNCS champion, really struggling on Central. He might be also going more of the content route as well with the Mexican-American or Mexican community, so it would be really good to see. Spade, one of the longest-standing players on this list. The closest he's gotten, right now I'd say he's a good controller player. Him and Chimp have been struggling a little bit this season as well. And they've been they struggled last grands as well, but good, consistent controller players. Same thing I'm going to say about Tai. I think he's a good player. Hasn't had like a super high peak, but really good quality player. Threats, great player, consistently at the top of the leaderboards. Threats and Booga are a scary duo. I believe they're top 5 in series points as well. And Threats and Macwood were even really solid last year. And as you can see, Macwood is nowhere to be found. And Threats is still at the top. TK, I think he's a really good controller player. I'll put him under there. I know people don't respect TK for some reason, but I think he's actually one of the most underrated controller players. Him and Okus, I believe, are 2 of the most underappreciated controller players. Next up, we have Trashy. I'm going to put him great. Him and Pump have been incredibly consistent. I believe Trashy is a fantastic fighter as well. They're such a good pairing. They've been incredibly consistent recently in my mind at this current moment. They've been top 10 leaderboards constantly. Users, I'm going to put him at mid. Vert, I think he's a good player, constantly, you know, grinder. He's got an FNCS technically underneath his belt, winning it on West. He's one of the few people that have gone from West to East early and actually done incredibly well. Visuals, I would consider him mid, nothing too crazy. Same thing with Royal. Same thing with Walkers as well. Except, yeah, probably here. And then I'm going to put Zypha at washed here, just because from his peak from early when he was in Sentinels, he's been nowhere near. Zypha hasn't really done too much in so long. I can't even remember his last top 5, but we'll put him in wash quit. And I'll see if there's anything I really want to change. There's not anything that's like super sticking out of me that's like super bad. There's some players I believe you could maybe move up, maybe like Jacques due to his FNCS. I'll give him, I won't say he's mid, he's playing with Qua. He's got an FNCS under his belt, so I'll give him good just compared to what he is now. Let's see here. Yeah, I mean, I think that's it, guys. Well, if you agree with me, let me know down below in the comments. If you disagree, let me know what I got wrong. And thank you guys for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed. If you did, please drop a like on this video, hit that subscribe button, and turn on post notifications. And I hope I'll be seeing you in the next one. Peace.